Right. Hello, everybody. This is Debbie Eno from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable. And as you know, on a Saturday, I have female educators from around the world who would be sharing their journey with us in relationship to what it was like during COVID, what it's been like after COVID, how the transition have been, the transition into the classroom, or they have actually transitioned onto the online space. So what that have been like for them. So on a Saturday, that's what we do, discuss education with female educators, looking at where we are as educators. In the UK, we have all gone back in the physical classroom. But as we know, it have not been easy because the mental health of these young people are all over the place. And the motivation of these young people are all over the place. Some of them don't even want to be in school. They don't want to be in school because they cannot connect. Communication, their level of communication is not there. The basic skills they once had is no longer there. The behavior is all over the place. They don't know how to communicate. They don't even know how to behave, because we also need to realize they're 2 years younger, even behavior-wise, than they are right now. So their mental age is not their development age, because they're in terms of their development is much later. Because let's say a 16-year-old behavior is a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old behavior is a 12-year-old behavior. And I'm seeing it every day in the classroom. And I have to remind myself, there is no point in getting upset about it. You just have to remind yourself, this is where these children are. So I just need to use different technique to address it. But believe me, sometimes it's really hard. And sometimes you're forgetting that the mental age doesn't connect to the expectation of where they used to be. So here we are with another educator, Sarah, who is going to tell us about herself, in terms of where she's at, what she teaches, what country she's in, etc. And she's going to share her journey with us, tell us the ups and the downs. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sarah Travis from the UK, from Worcestershire in the West Midlands, but I currently live in Germany as we're an expat family and have lived in several places across the world. I was a primary school teacher for 5 years, and then I moved to online tutoring of reading for primary school age children. And that was actually before COVID, so a couple of months before COVID. And then I was tutoring reading online throughout when we had all the lockdowns, and I was tutoring children from all over the world, helping families with reading. And I know that the families found that invaluable at that time because there was so much going on, and having someone one-to-one was so helpful for them. And the children were actually able to make progress in that time. And I know during when they were doing home learning, as we should call it, rather than homeschooling, because they are two completely different things, it was just really helpful for them. So that's my journey. And at the moment I transitioned away from doing one-to-one support to more helping parents and helping them with supporting reading at home.
Right, thank you. That's interesting, because the fact that you transitioned to the online platform a few months before COVID, you had an advantage than all of us. Because although you were the classroom teacher and you actually moved in, so you had a little bit more experience. So how have you, when COVID actually struck, right, how was it for you in terms of the way you were teaching these children?
So I remember when literally the news was coming through that the schools were closing, I was on a one-to-one session with a child, and the parent came in and said, I need to book you for as many sessions as I can a week. They literally are closing the school. Like, I've just had a message, like the government are saying that they have to go stop tomorrow. And then what happened, like, I was having so many requests because parents and schools just didn't know where to turn to next. And the families that I already worked with were then giving out, like, they were saying, you need to work with this person. And I had so many requests from other people because they wanted to make sure that their child were making progress. And they knew that because I'd already had this online experience, so I knew what Zoom was, which some people didn't even know what it was at that time.
I didn't.
Because I remember when I used to send out emails, there was a big like blurb, but this is Zoom, this is how you link onto it, and like a kind of a video on how to do it all. And then I quickly had to take that away because everyone then knew what Zoom was. But before that, I was like helping people to get onto Zoom because nobody knew what it was. And it just was like, it changed like literally overnight, like, and it wasn't just the parents that were coming to me. I was part of like local business networks, and people were again asking me, how do you do this thing online? Like, can you help me? And because I'd had that experience of like, I knew what children were like online, which I know was a challenge. So I knew that what they were going to do with the camera, and what they were going to do with the annotate tool, and what they were going to try and do if you gave them control of the mouse. So I knew all of that, and was able to try and work out what the best way was to teach like that. And I know that when I remember having friends saying to me, what do I do? Like, can you give me some resources to help me? So yeah, it was an interesting time.
Yeah. The fact is, as I said, you were a seasoned online person. We were novice. So for people like us, we have to thank the YouTube for being a teacher, because YouTube were, most of us as teachers, YouTube were our teacher, because we didn't have a clue. We were just thrown in and say, there you are, we're going online. And if you're lucky, you might have the school you're in giving you a few hour session. I say, oh, by tomorrow we're going live. And you're thinking, how do I do that? So in terms like that, it was challenging. But for you,
it was interesting because I was with children from different schools as well, and hearing how different schools were handling it. I remember one school had said they literally had printed out an entire workbook for the next like 2-3 weeks, and like, there you go, we're not doing anything online. You can just have that great big wad of paper and just work through worksheets. Whereas others were on Zoom or on whatever platform they're on for like 6 hours a day. Like, it was so varied, like how schools were kind of dealing with it. And I think after a while, people worked out kind of what the better way of doing things were. But to start with, it was quite interesting talking to the children to kind of see, well, this is what my school's doing, and this is what my school's doing. Like, it was
it was all over the place, as you say. And I think as teachers, nobody knew what was happening, so we were imitating the classroom. So the classroom says 6 hours, we were doing exactly as the classroom. But what we found out was you were becoming more tired on the online space, because you had so much more stress to deal with, because you were dealing with the non-showing up, the camera off, the non-communication, the little brother coming in and chatting away, and the others pulling down, and the others, they're bantering against each other, and you're talking, and we had to deal with all of that. So I think when we first started, everybody just did the 6 hours online. But as time progressed, I think they realized that teachers were being battered emotionally and physically. So things need to be looked at differently. So, we started having autonomy in terms of, okay, you have X amount of lessons, so therefore you teach X amount of time, because the students needed a break.
It's a different, completely different situation. Like, they're learning a completely different way. It's like if you go into like the homeschooling community, you'll quite quickly realize that they don't teach for 6 hours a day, because when you're working with a child in a different way, it looks different. Like, they're learning different skills in different ways. So it was trying to get your head around that was a challenge.
Exactly. And it's like, for me, it was a situation where I had sometimes I had 1 hour lesson, 2 hours lesson. Well, we were having lots of brain break, because they couldn't cope and I couldn't cope. So we needed to have brain break because I was teaching and they were sleeping. Right? That's the thing. I was teaching and they were sleeping because sometimes you realize the only voice on that platform was yours. There was nobody else responding to you. It was just you, because remember, these children did not want to be there, right? And some of them were in the bedroom. So they were not even getting up and getting dressed. That's why when they said, oh, put your camera up. Sorry, miss, it's not, my camera is broken. That's all the common phrase is, my camera is broken. So
which is when I was doing one-on-one, I was like, you need to have your camera on unless there's a complete reason why you don't, like the parent, and I said to the parents, like, they need to have their camera on. So how people did it without cameras, I don't think I could have done that. But then it is different one-to-one to a group setting, like it is.
Well, the thing is, some schools felt it was necessary to have cameras on, and some schools did not feel it was necessary. In the school I was in, there were kind of easy, the children didn't want to put the camera on, that's fine, but I said to them, I'm sure you meant to put the camera on. No, miss, we were told that we don't have to. So I was fighting a losing battle, because you're teaching as if you're teaching in a vacuum. You don't know who you're talking to. You're just talking to a screen. That was one of the things I found so challenging, because, and I used to say to them, look, I'm out here all alone, it's quite lonely. Someone say hello to me, and they're gonna, one child might take off the thing and put the camera on and say, hi, miss. Okay, and I was getting all excited and they switch off again, right? So it was a pointless exercise. So you did not even have enough time to see what this child looked like.
Oh gosh.
So things like that was really challenging, because even when you went back into the physical, the students all knew who you were, but you didn't even have a clue. When they say, hi, miss, and they're talking to you on the corridor, and you say, okay, are you year 10, year 12, or what year group are you? And oh, but miss, I'm year 10. I say, how am I supposed to know that? You know me and I don't know you. So these were some of the challenges. But you, as you said, they had to have the camera on. So what was it? So if someone did not put the camera on, what did you do? What was your comeback on that?
Well, I generally, I would say to them, because I had a relationship with the parents, and because being a private situation rather than a school situation, like the parents would expect them to be able to see them, so that because it also was to make sure that they were, because it wasn't one-to-one work, so it was making sure that they were doing the work. Occasionally I did have one, but it tended to be old. It was the ones who were slightly older, so like an 8-9-year-old, they would go, oh, I don't need to have it on today, or they would try that whole my camera's not working. It's like, well, if I send your mum a message, is she going to say the same thing? And then they'll suddenly turn it on. So I did have that advantage that oh, put it on there, So it was a slightly different situation. But it was always nice because I think they liked to talk to me to kind of, it was someone different outside of the house or not at school. Like they couldn't really talk to their friends at school because they were in these kind of little screens, weren't they? They weren't able to have that. It was just like, there's a teacher, you have to do your work. You're not having that kind of communication between themselves. And then you kind of got fed up of everyone in your house after a while, didn't you? So it was nice for them to actually talk to someone else. So they told me all sorts of things about what their rabbit had done for the day, or what they'd built in Lego. I had it all, but I think they needed that at that time. Like that was their kind of like, oh, it's someone else to talk to. And they're gonna be happy for me to talk to them. So. Which was important at that time. It wasn't just about learning. It was like they needed that as well.
Right. So on the online platform, right? Because you were taught in school, how different?
How different is online? So I spent quite a bit of time working out how I would get the resources up so I could get interaction with them. how I could do games and things like that. Like it was quite different in that respect, like because doing it just through a screen, you want them to kind of produce something as well. Like I find it really hard when I had some children who I did writing with, and trying to get them to do writing at the same time and see what they were doing. I did find that quite hard. We worked out in the end, but it was always a bit of a, like, you had to think of it just in a completely different way. And I remember saying to the little boy I did it with, I was like, have you finished it? Have you finished it? Like, have you done that sentence? And he's like, just give me a break. Like, I have some time, because I just couldn't see what he was doing. And like his mum had also told me he will be a bit lazy. He won't do a lot. So I was like, it was like kind of get that balance between give him the space and time to do it, and also like, yeah, he needs to be doing something. Yeah. So we did work it out like eventually, but it took time to kind of find my feet and work it out. And then like the first lesson was always a bit of a disaster, but then
yeah. So how did you get over in terms of making your lesson interactive with the children?
So I used to do I had a very much kind of like a set kind of, this is what we always started with, then we moved on to the next thing, depending on, like, I'd vary it slightly depending on each child. I used to use annotate a lot on the computer, on Zoom. So if I'd put something on, instead of getting them to, because I was with early readers, and I think a lot of people forget this with children who are trying to use technology. If you can't read, it's very difficult to actually use any of the platforms, because like if an error message came up on them, they'd have to go and get their parent to read it, because they couldn't read like the Zoom has got this problem, or you need to click on this. Like I'm teaching them to read that, but like those words are ahead of where they are. So I used to do a lot of like, okay, we've got this game here. Can you circle it for me? Because I find if you give them the remote control, that's when they start clicking on all sorts of different things. So we did a lot of circling, and because even to use the chat, like the level I was at, like they couldn't, like to type on a keyboard was actually quite difficult for them. So we did a lot of that. I did a lot of like circling things and like a lot of verbal back and forth, because it's a different challenge for the people teaching who are teaching 4 or 5 year olds to someone who's teaching like year 10, 11. Like it's a completely different set of problems. Like they all wanted their camera on, and they all wanted to show you what their pet had been doing for the day. But
that's of course the fact that they all wanted to show you what they've been doing.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So in terms of how motivated were the children on the online platform? Oh, because you still, oh no, you don't teach them anymore. How motivated were the children on the online platform?
I think it varied from day to day. Like to start with, because it was quite new, they were like, oh wow, I want to do this, I want to get on with this. I had some kids who it took a while to kind of warm up to, but I think that's because they realized they were doing something in addition to their schoolwork, because it was tutoring rather than school. But then they did warm up to it, and then they wanted to, because I moved quite quickly and was able to fit quite a lot in half an hour. Like they were just like, okay, we're doing this now, we're doing this, like but then I did find, like particularly during COVID, when we were in lockdown and I was having them like almost every day or every other day, like some days they were just exhausted from all the screen time, from the like everything that they were kind of not seeing friends, not being able to go out that much. Like some days it was hard to get them to do anything, just not because they didn't want to do it, it's just that they were just wiped out. Like it was difficult at times.
So what do you do when they didn't want to, when they were so washed out? What did you do?
So that's where all my kind of bank of resources and games that I was slowly putting together, like I used to bring those out quite a lot. So there was about 5 or 6 games that I knew if I put them on, like they would definitely be able to do some phonics and be able to do some reading. And I did a lot that so I found an amazing resource which had like there were ebooks, they were leveled ebooks, but they had like 2,000 books on there for them to choose from. So I used to like give them the choice. So when they had the choice, and I was like, here are all these books, like for each level I had about 20 books. So they when I scrolled through and they were like, oh, can I have that one? And they're like, because they'd chosen that book, then they wanted to read that book. So it was like they had a choice in that, and then they suddenly were like wanted to read that. They always wanted to read about animals most of the time. So I learned so much about random animals. I don't know what it was about these it was like almost every child wanted to read about animals. I don't know what that was about, but that just seemed to be the thing. But yeah, because they had the choice, they said like, yeah, can I do that one? Because I don't think, again, at that time they were having a lot of choice in necessarily what they could do, because everyone was just surviving, weren't they?
Yeah. Thank you. In terms of we looked at motivation, and in terms of behavior, right? That children, yes, they were home with the parents, but at the same time, you know, the other thing is, were the parents there with them on the platform?
So a lot of the time, no, because what parents needed to get on with things, or were working. Like that was the biggest struggle. I know that I had quite a lot of parents who were trying to do, like they would be trying to do a Zoom call in the background, because trying to keep up with their work and keep their child busy. Like they were in earshot, they were always nearby, but they just let the child they knew that in that time that they were actually going to be getting something with me. Whereas I think sometimes when they were trying to keep up with the schoolwork, it was difficult for them. So yeah, everyone was balancing so many different things.
Okay, thank you. Did you find that you had to help the child with the schoolwork as well as helping them to read?
Sometimes, yeah. So sometimes parents would have sent me like, this is what I'd like you to have a look at with them. This is their schoolwork. But a lot of the time, I think they did keep it. It was separate because, it was just something different for them, and they knew that because I was working the one-to-one, I was actually having that interaction with them day to day. Well, depending on how much they did a week. That they weren't actually getting that at the school at the time. So I remember there was one little boy, he'd had an assessment just before they went into lockdown, and they said, he was not doing very well in reading. And then he'd done work with me, and then when they went back into school, they did the assessment again, and they were expecting him to have not made a lot of progress, and he'd gone up like 3-4 levels. Whoa. And they were like, hang on, what's happened here? And they're like, yeah, but she's been working with him like one-to-one, like it's like we've and they're, oh my, he's caught up. Everyone else has gone backwards, but he's caught up. Like what's been happening? Like
that's fantastic.
There was quite a few like children like that. Like it was, I think particularly at that time, they needed something different to what they were getting at school.
So in that case, in terms of behavior, you did not see much behavior issue.
Yeah and no. They're still kids, and like I don't think I had the kind of like, if you'd have in a group situation, so like you said about like the not even turning the camera on and like them messaging each other, I didn't have to deal with that kind of thing. Like it was more like the trying to get them to focus and like, okay, we're gonna have a go at doing this now, and it was that kind of thing, or just like taking a long time to answer a question when they knew the answer. It was more that kind of thing. Or like, so yeah, sometimes they'd like to try and turn the camera upside. I had one little boy who used to he'd worked out that you could turn the camera around. Like I don't know how he did it, and I couldn't explain to him how to turn it back round again. But again, when I sent his mum a message, she turned around pretty quick. Like he's like, I'm upside down now. No, you're not.
Exactly.
Yeah, because his mum came in.
And you're good. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, all kids are going to see how far they can push it, aren't they? But
yeah, exactly. So as much as you had a kind of a different behavior issue with the children. Behavior was there, but it was just different. Like you know, being smart and camera going upside down and all this kind of yes, I've had that as well. You know, having the camera and then just trying to turn, you know, turn the head and upside down. Come on, you know, all these things. You know, it's
it was a novelty to start with, wasn't it? Like they were like, oh look, and then Zoom kept doing all these different features, didn't they? So that you could do all these cool things, and like, of course I wanted to try it out. And it was like, but not in the lesson. Can you do it on your own time?
Exactly. Thank you for that. You also used to be in the physical classroom teacher, right?
Yeah.
So how different would you say that it has been? Because now you're on, you know, you're online for, you know, more or less, you know, permanent basis, etc. How different would you say in terms of when you were in your classroom with your year, was it year 5?
So I was reception and year 4, so
Two
quite different ages.
Yes, isn't it? Wow.
Just a bit. So yeah, it was quite like, I think I probably could have done year 4 online. I don't know how I would have done reception like all the time because a lot of that is like play-based learning, and like the learning isn't just the kind of academic side of things. It was a lot of kind of social side of things. I don't know how they were doing it, and I wouldn't even like to kind of hazard a guess for that.
You know, but as you rightly say, in terms of year 4, you know, they have greater level of understanding and you know, connection, so that would be slightly easier to teach. Whereas reception is very tactile, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Which is why I think a lot of people, they walk toward, they don't know what's going on when they go in a reception classroom. Like it's just, it looks like chaos, but once you sat in it, like you can it is learning, but it is learning in a completely different way to I think most people think of learning.
Exactly. And do you think that the way you teach reception to learn things, do you think that technique should be continued throughout primary school?
Oh yeah. Is it interesting because here in Germany they don't start school until 6, which is obviously a lot later than in the UK and a lot of other English speaking places. So my daughter's actually 4, so she would have actually started school if she was in the UK this year, but she's in kindergarten. So she's continued. She goes to kindergarten and she plays all day basically. They quite often, they'll literally just go on a bus and go to a park in another part of the town, and then they'll come back again, and that's what they do for the day. They choose where they want to go and play. They don't do any like formal reading, writing, maths, which I keep thinking, oh my gosh, she's never going to learn it. But then they do. Like they when they go to school at 6, they're actually ready for it, and they learn. But she's having all this time doing all this, the social interaction, and like it's a different way of doing it. And yeah, it's been interesting to see the comparison, but I keep thinking she's going to be behind, but then she's not. Like she's actually doing what all the research is saying that we should be doing. We should be letting the kids wait a little bit later to be learning, and it should be far more play-based.
You know, the beautiful thing about that is this is something I constantly trying to advocate in terms of, we know children learn through play. So your child is learning so much more than she would have learned if she was in the UK. Because everything learning is through play. And when we think how the brain operates, it's like, you know, the brain doesn't like to be pressured. And the more you do things in a very relaxed fashion, the more you are going to remember it and enjoy it. So that technique really have the psychological backing with it. Because the more we pressuring them on this, they're playing, and you're playing that they're counting, you're playing they're communicating, you're playing, they're singing, and that is such a beautiful way of learning. It's
nice to go in and see her doing that. Like it's just different for me. Like,
Yeah.
having been in the school system at that age in the UK, and like knowing everything that all the like targets that they have to hit, and like, yeah, it's just different.
Exactly. But you also know from the experience in Germany that other children who've gone in at age 6, they're far ahead. They're
Yeah.
good. So you know it works, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, because I've been amazed this week, because I've been worried that she can't really communicate with the children, but she's been there 6 months and she's now fluent in German. Like, she like was talking in and out, going in between English and German. I was like, wow. Like, so
Exactly.
she's learned that in the last six months. Like,
Without
it's,
formal teaching. Look at that.
yeah.
What is that
So
saying to us? You know, the fact that you are a traditional teacher, right? And then you now seeing what works. So therefore,
yeah.
there's enough evidence to show you that this formal program teaching doesn't work because the children are not yet ready. Because the fact that they're now learning through play, and when they're ready to transition, it just happens.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful model, you know. It's like the same thing in Sweden as well. It's such a beautiful model because we see it works. Because these countries, the education, you know, in terms of their ability and education standard is so much higher than in those countries that they're programming these children. It's like, you need to do SATs, 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 SATs.
Yeah.
And the children are crying, they're stressed, they hate it.
Yeah.
There's no enjoyment.
Oh, no. Like,
wow. That is so beautiful. And I do hope that you begin to see, in terms of teaching, traditional teaching.
It's just like, because that's like, I knew that the whole time I was at school, and then I went to do a PGC, and that's what we were taught. This is what you have to do. And then in the classroom, like, I was in a school which was highly academic, and they started from 3 and it went all the way through. And then it's like, and now I was expecting her to go in September. I was like, nope, she's not going to go till she's 6. Okay, this is. I hope it works. And it seems to be. So.
Exactly, but you got proof that it worked. The fact that this child wasn't taught formally German. The child wasn't taught formal how to learn German, and the child learned German. That is enough to tell you that technique and that method works.
Oh, yeah.
Because you see, how this child is learning is, the child is learning through speaking it. That's the whole thing about it.
Yeah.
Because this child is, you know, in order for her to communicate with her peers, she need to hear and use the language that they're using for her to communicate.
Oh, yeah.
And vice versa. So therefore, this is saying to us that, you know, the program system that we think that was the okay system, we're beginning to realize that it's not working. Because look, your child is starting at 6, and every child that's been there before her have gone through. Okay. Exactly.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think the UK and a lot of the English-speaking countries are trying to compete with like the Far East, and where all the schools are on there. But then there's a whole completely different education system again, where it is very formal and everything is taught in a certain way. But then, are the children happy? Like, do they actually want to be there? Like,
and are they ready? Are they ready? Or are we programming robots? That's the other thing about it. That's sadly, you know, and I'm listening to you, how your child is learning. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I need to do some research on that. It's just beautiful. Because it works. Because in Sweden, it's the same way. Sweden, the children don't go to school all day, you know, and they start much later. And the education system, the academic ability is much higher than the UK.
Yeah, and I keep looking really for when she's 6. What we're going to do is, it might change because of my husband's job's a bit all over the place. But when they are 6, they actually only go to school from 8:30 till 11:45. So they're home before lunch.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
So she's got a little friend who's 6, and he's like, he finishes school before they finish kindergarten. So it's
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. And they're learning there because
Yeah.
come on, when you have the children in the school all day, those children are tired. They're not even learning what you're telling them. They only take it, as you used to be a primary school teacher in the system. You only catch them in the morning. In the morning time, the brain is fresh, so therefore you have them there. So you've got the academic. In the afternoon, they need to be sleeping.
Yeah.
They need to be sleeping. They need nap time. They
Yeah.
need nap
Oh
time.
Yeah.
So it really is fascinating. So what would you say in terms of, if you could give someone 3 tips in relationship to the triumph of online teaching and the challenge of online teaching, what would be the 3 things?
So I think a lot of the time now is not to compare it to what it was like during the pandemic, because although you had experience of online teaching, that was in an emergency situation. A lot of the time everyone was kind of trying to cobble something together to get education to children, whereas actually when we've had time and people can look at have the resources and the knowledge now to teach online, it can open a lot of doors, and it can give you access to different expertise, and so you can tap into a lot of different knowledge by using these online platforms. And not just to kind of throw it all out, it didn't work during COVID, it was all a bit of a disaster. It was a different time, it was an emergency situation. It doesn't have to look like that. It can be really helpful for children, and it can be really helpful for adults to help their child at home. Like you literally have the entire world's knowledge in the palm of your hand, like you and not to completely throw it out. Like it's so that's something like I would make sure you're not always comparing it to that.
That's brilliant though. You said that because a lot of teachers now, if anybody said to me, what have we taken from the online platform in the classroom, I would say 0. A lot of teachers have taken back nothing, because it's like, oh, the online classroom, it's like all the and it's quite sad, because as you rightly say, there's so much more skills than that you have right now. For me, I have a lot of Zoom skills. I have a lot of breakout room skills, and I just feel that, as you rightly say, it is such a rich set of knowledge.
And if we didn't we wouldn't be able to have this conversation now, and they wouldn't be able to it's just that otherwise you've just got those 4 walls of a classroom. Like you can't go beyond that, whereas if you can use it in creative ways, like online learning really can enrich the experience. But you just have to think of it in a different way. Like you do not compare it to what. And I think as soon as anyone hears the word home learning, they kind of go, oh no, but it's like it can work. It just needs to be done in a way that suits works for the children, rather than just to try and get some knowledge into them.
Can you give us an example of what you would see as something rich that you've seen from the online platform?
So I've worked with quite a lot of network with a lot of online tutors. So, and a lot of people, you wouldn't necessarily be able to reach that individual if you didn't use the online method. So for instance, I was teaching, so I think I said before, children in the Seychelles. I was teaching children in Doha in America. Like they wouldn't have been able to have my skills to help their child. And I wouldn't have learned about all those different places either. Like for me as well, like I kind of grew as an educator too. And like if you're in the classroom, you can connect with people anywhere in the world. Like you can bring in experts into the classroom that if you didn't use all these different technologies, you would be very much stuck in what was available just in front of you. Like it does open the whole world.
Yeah, that is very true. Okay, 2 more of your tips.
Sorry, so it was for tips for online using online entry. Is that what it was? Sorry.
Yeah. We're looking at 3 tips in terms of the challenges,
Mhm.
and 3 tips in terms of the triumph.
The triumph. Oh yeah. So I think it is good that people did actually give it a go, because I remember before the pandemic, and it explained to me, oh, you can use this, and then people, oh, okay, let's give this a go, and then no one knew how Zoom worked, no one knew how to do different things on the computer, and like I think like we know how all that works and how it can, how you, I mean, just to jump on a quick Zoom call, everyone knows how to do that. Whereas before, I don't think you'd even try to do it, like just because it was like, oh, this is very new. Like she's like, I don't want to touch this at all. So that has also been a triumph there, with people will at least be willing to give it a go, even if they hear the word, I don't want to give it a go at all.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things that it has as well, has in the kind of like in the reverse of it, is it's made people force in some ways to go away and look at education in different ways and not just use a computer. So it's kind of forced them to go, okay, how can I do this without a screen? Like, I don't want to use a computer. So they have gone like, and then they have got a bit more creative and to kind of, look at education in different ways.
That's very, very true. That's so true. What advice you would give someone who have used the online platform but is a little bit skeptical to use it? It's like, I suppose there's a fear element, because we do have a lot of educators who have this fear element of, wanting to use Zoom or Teams or any of those things.
So I think if you take a bit of time just to kind of familiarize yourself with all the things that could be useful for you on the platform, and so stepping away from it just being like, can I deliver my PowerPoint presentation just online? So it and replicating exactly what you're doing in the classroom, and thinking about like, so I think I said before, I use the annotate feature a lot. So getting children to circle things and making it more interactive. And I did spend quite a bit of time just kind of looking through resources which would work better online than in person. So to be honest with you, I don't think I could, because I did have one little boy who I treated him in person and then also online. And when COVID hit, we did it all online. But I found it really actually quite hard to take my resources and do it in person, because like it was almost like they are specific just for teaching online, and it didn't really necessarily translate to in person. I still had to do it on an iPad. Like it was I find it quite, I think I got myself so programmed into, okay, this is how I teach now. I don't do it the other way. So just sometimes almost like saying, you doesn't have to necessarily, it will look different. Like, so spending that time to think, is this actually one I would just use online, or is it one that I could use in person and online, or just in person? So kind of almost putting it into those kind of little buckets.
Right. Thank you. That's so interesting, because I've not had a teacher who've been transitioned from the physical classroom and wholly online, and it's really nice, because there's so many positive that you actually demonstrating to us that's happening on the online platform. Because once COVID had finished, this is what some educators have done. Once COVID have finished, they also have finished on the online platform. And it's like, COVID done and they done too. It's like they're back into the classroom, and that's it. Hallelujah, they're in the classroom. No more online. And I think it's quite sad. I think it's so sad, because there's so much we could still do on the online platform, and we're not using it. In some schools, it's not being used at all.
Yeah, which is almost like a kind of a step backwards, isn't it?
It is, because education was the industry that have not used technology as other industry. And the fact that COVID have actually forced us to use it, one would have thought that it would have been working alongside the physical classroom. But I'm afraid it's not, because even, some of the schools I've worked in, they have nothing, because I'm saying to them, okay, so I need to upload the PowerPoint for you guys. So which platform you guys use? We don't use any. What do you mean you don't use any? No, we don't. We use it during COVID time. During COVID, we use Google Classroom, and now COVID is there. So you need to send them emails. What?
Oh, which makes it longer and more complicated.
It makes it longer, and it's like, I'm saying this doesn't make sense. We had an experience of the online platform. We should be using that to now send them bulk.
And there's so many more, because once you kind of start working in the online space, you then get really overwhelmed, because there's a new platform every other week, or a new way of doing something every other week, and you're almost like, oh, which one shall I choose to use?
Exactly.
And it's in definitely people who work not necessarily in education but in the online space, they're always talking about, okay, you can do it this way, and then you're like, okay, I'll try that way then, and it's just getting faster and faster and faster how you can communicate and send things to people.
Exactly. And there's so many different ways. And it's quite
but then
sad.
Teachers they're strapped for time, aren't they? And they've got a lot on their plates anyway, and to learn something else is
yeah, but if we learn how to use the online space, i.e. technology, our life would be easier, because you just only have to use it. You just only have to learn it, and then you just keep on using it. And the more you use it, the better you become at it. And when something new comes, you're able to connect with that. But when we decide, oh well, COVID came and now COVID is gone, let's go back to as normal. And some teachers don't even use it at all.
And the problem is the kids will get to the kids can use it, they're absolutely using it, but they'll get to the end of their education and then go into the workplace and be like, oh, what are all these platforms? How do we use them now? Because they haven't been able to use them.
Yeah. And it's quite sad, because we just wanted it just for COVID, and COVID is done, so we done too. And it's a sad thing. That's why for me, doing this platform, it helps to keep up with my technology. Because we need, everything is going technology. Except in education. Every industry have explored technology. Education haven't. We went during COVID, and now COVID is done, so we actually, crawling back into the physical classroom and staying there, which is quite sad. Which is quite sad. Is there anything else you want to say to us?
Can't think of anything at the moment. Just to give it a go. It isn't as scary, and just don't think of it as it was in COVID. It is. There are a lot of benefits to using technology.
Yeah, what is so nice, what you said is so powerful, because we had to use it as an emergency during COVID. Now it's no longer emergency, so we need to start enjoying it. Applying it and enjoying it, because the experience we had when we had to do an emergency is very different now than when we're doing it for knowledge and entertainment and things like that. It is very true, and I love the way the fact that you say that. I never thought of it like that. I look at it as some educators say, I don't want to have anything to do with the online thing. And there I am saying, well, Zoom is quite nice actually. There's so many
oh yeah, I used to quite like doing it, going on and doing it, but and I'd have teacher friends being like, I hate this thing. It's like, but you can use it this way. I don't want to know.
Exactly, and they just kind of switch off. And I'm saying, okay, you've got Google Classroom. Your school is giving you autonomy to, get the student to hand in the assignment, marking it on Zoom, on the Google Classroom. You have all this, lovely things to do, where some schools are not even, as I said, some schools are not even entertaining it. And what they fail to realize is that sometimes when you have PowerPoint with videos on it, it's difficult to upload it as I send it as an email, because it's too big. Whereas if you had to upload it onto the Google Classroom, no problem. But sending it to sending it to an email, isn't it? Because that's one of the challenges I'm having now, trying to send it to email. And I cannot send it to email because there are files in it.
Too
Because
big.
I've got 3 videos. The videos might be, 5 minutes or 4 minutes, but it still isn't
And the
connected.
videos are what the children are going to learn from, and that's the bit they're going to look for.
Exactly. And that is quite
Unless
sad.
it's in like a 30-second TikTok, they don't really care, do they? That's unfortunately what it comes to.
Yeah, it is so very true. And that's one of the challenges we're having, where schools are not using, resources from the online platform, technology. They're saying, okay, send by email. Really? It doesn't work anymore. So everything that we've learned on the online platform, they're saying, well, forget that, wipe it off your brain. That doesn't, you don't need to use it anymore because we're back in the physical. And I don't think that works. It's quite sad. Okay, thank you very, very much for that, Sarah. It was a fantastic session. It really and I do hope that it make educators out there look at online and technology very, very differently, because it is important that as educators we start embracing technology, because every industry have embraced it. They intertwine it in the system. Except education, we actually just went in and we've come back out. Yes, that's what we've done. We went in and come back out and saying, we back in the physical classroom now, so that's fine. We're going to be left behind, guys. If we don't get ourselves sorted, education will be left behind. And we cannot afford that, because we are teaching the future generation.
And they need to know these skills more than they need to know a lot of the things that they're being taught.
Exactly. And if we want AI to come and take over from us, well, who knows? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my Facebook audience. And as you guys know, tomorrow I have a show called Celebrating Motherhood. We need to celebrate ourselves. Nobody's going to celebrate us, women out there. We need to celebrate motherhood. And when I say celebrate motherhood, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have your biological child. It could be a child that you connect with. You see that as you are supporting that child on a motherhood basis. Any of those. We just need to celebrate us as the female species. Anyway, thank you very much, Sarah. It was fantastic. And have a fantastic evening. Thank you, Facebook. Have a